In 1906, Eliezer ben Yehuda had been actively working and escalated his efforts to revive the Hebrew language to a language that would be spoken for everyday use. 1906 was a period of intense activity as he worked towards his vision of reestablishing the Hebrew language as a living language, essential for the culture and national life of the restored Jewish people. His colossal enterprise of reviving the Hebrew language with the first Hebrew dictionary, volume by volume, 7 in all, and the first volume that was started in 1906 was completed in 1908. Now here's an interesting thing. As he's working to rebirth the Hebrew tongue, the Hebrew language, the Hebrew tongue, a revival breaks out in 1906, characterized by speaking in tongues, which led to the greatest harvest of souls in human history at that point in time. A coincidence? I don't think so. In 1908, the ministry, now known as Chosen People Ministries, was then called the Williamsburg Mission to the Jews, was led by Leopold Koln, the Hungarian Jew who became a Christian, was focused on evangelism and services for Jewish immigrants in New York. Many Jewish people really began to flood in to the Messianic community at this time with the rebirth of the Hebrew language. Not a coincidence. Let's talk about prophetic indicator number 2, dry bones shaking. You see, if you look at all of the Great Awakenings, the first, second, and third Great Awakening, the Korean revivals, the Welsh revival, all of them have a Jewish touch point. In the 1700s, the first Aliyah, the first return of Jewish people in the 1700s, Jewish people were fleeing the persecution in Europe, going back to the Promised Land for the first time in major numbers, began to coincide with the first Great Awakening. This continued on through the second Great Awakening, and into the third. And in tandem with this, we had the first Aliyah, the birth of the Zionist movement, and we had some of the greatest persecutions of Jewish people, the Russian pogroms that killed 1.5 million Jewish people in Poland, in Russia, and throughout their Pale of Settlement, which was a driving force for Jewish people to return. So persecution, migration of the Jewish people coming back to the land, the first movements, and the beginning of the first major waves of Jewish believers all touch into major revivals among the nations. Prophetic indicator number 3, the return of Jewish believers. In the beginning of the 1700s, we began to see the first major harvest of Jewish souls for the kingdom, returning to Yeshua. One of the most notable in the 1700s was Gershom Mendes Sexius. And he was the first native-born Jewish clergyman in the United States, serving as the leader of congregations of Sharith Israel in New York, and he was a Jewish believer. The first native-born Jewish clergyman in the United States was a Messianic Jew. Felix Mendelssohn, who lived from 1809 to 1847, famous composer, he was a Jewish believer. This had a connection into a movement called the Moravians. And the Moravians established a prayer movement in Germany and here in the United States at a place called Moravian Falls. And they had 100 years of continuous prayer that was unbroken, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And you can go to that place where they had the land deeded to Yeshua, and they prayed, and 24/7 prayer is going up there again. And they also believed that God was going to bring back the Jewish people to the land. The Korean revivals, the Welsh revival, the tent revivals of the 40s, and even the Chinese revival, all are tied into Jewish awakening. And some even refer to a fourth Great Awakening, which was the Jesus movement here in the United States, began a period of an unprecedented harvest of Jewish souls. And many of the current leaders of the Messianic movement globally in Israel and the United States came to faith during this time period.